It is Thursday, August 27th, 2020. I'm Pastor Thor Ramsey. This is Gospel for Five, where we take 5 minutes out of our day, focus on the gospel and the one who saved our souls. Today we're in Galatians again, chapter 3 this time, verses 3 through 5. So let's look at that. Galatians 3, verses 3 through 5. Are you so foolish? Well, that's what I really need to begin my day with, because generally I am. Are you so foolish, having begun by the Spirit? Are you now being perfected by the flesh? Well, let's stop right there, because I think that's what so much striving is, as we begin by the Spirit. Again, the Spirit does this work in us. We have this simple rest and trust in who Christ is, what He has done, and then the point is that God has accepted us because of Christ. Everything He did was because of Christ and who Christ is. And now all of a sudden we think God is going to work in us because of who we are once we're Christians. Well, let me perfect myself in the flesh. Let me make my flesh acceptable to God. Let me clean things up here, get things in order that God might use me. Are you so foolish, having begun by the Spirit? Are you now being perfected by the flesh? Did you suffer so many things in vain, if indeed it was in vain? Does He who supplies the Spirit to you and works miracles among you do so by works of the law or by hearing with faith? Well, there is how God works in our lives. We hear the Word, we believe it. So we hear it, we believe it. We hear it, we believe it. If you're doing that in your Christian life, God's at work. I mean, I know a lot of us want big Hollywood production type evidences of Christ working in our lives. I had a simple phone call yesterday from a friend who moved away. The call came at a better time, because I don't want to go through all my woes, but with all the social distancing and the shutdowns and everything else, it gets to you after a while. And again, it just feels like, I think I shared with somebody that felt like for 4 years you've been working on this manuscript, really. You've been working on this project. And then your computer shuts down and it doesn't come back up. So right now you're like, what you're wondering is, am I going to get my manuscript back? Has all this work been for naught? Has it been in vain? Is how it feels a lot of times. So you're like, why would you do this, Lord, type of thing. So this friend called me, as I said, who moved away, and just said, hey man, I just wanted to call you and tell you how much God has used you in my life. And man, that was great to hear, right? Because sometimes when we don't have the Hollywood miracle that we can point to, all we have is this. The reality is we hear it, we hear the Word, and we actually believe the Word. But that's evidence of God working. Are you so foolish? Having begun by the Spirit, are you now being perfected by the flesh? And this is the problem sometimes with charismatic and Pentecostal fellowships. They're so desperate for God to be working, but in their minds, the only way God is working is if some sort of human physical activities, if somebody's falling down or bouncing or something like that, that's the only sign to them that God's at work. So they will even, I think many times, well-intentioned, but it's damaging to their spiritual lives and to those around them. However well-intentioned it is, they will manufacture, work themselves up. In a sense, it's a type of talking themselves into, through the flesh, a work of the Lord, what they think is a work of the Lord, when it's really not. It's just them manifesting their own, bounciness, right? The Tigger mentality takes over a church. But here's the reality. Does He who supplies the Spirit to you and works miracles among you do so by works of the law, by the flesh, or by hearing with faith? Just as Abraham believed God and it was counted to him as righteousness. In other words, That's the sign that God's at work in your life as a Christian. Do you hear the word expounded? Do you hear the word today? Do you believe the word today in your heart, in your soul, in your mind? God's at work. Now, what's God said to you today? What are you going to do about it?